One thing that I did last week, or was it the week before? I think it was last week. I brought Broward County to the front of the congregation last week. Or it might have been late in the week before. Who knows? But I brought Broward County. Shout out to Broward County. If you're not familiar with it, it's over in Florida. I believe over in the Fort Lauderdale area. I brought Broward County to the front of the congregation. And the reason why I brought Broward County to the front of the congregation was because 17 officers, over 100 were investigated. So everybody must have a thriving business over there with employees. 17 officers were arrested, cuffed, and then turned over to the federal authorities for getting PPP loans and not actually deserving of PPP loans. They did. Your federal authorities, your deputies, your sheriffs, they did the walk of shame. And I had been telling people, hey, man, Biden extended it to like 10 years to where they can then investigate you and find you. Once they find out you did that PPP loan, it ain't going to be nice. It's not going to be nothing cool. There's nothing cool about fast money. Fast money don't last, man. But you know what else don't last? Shout out to Brittany. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly. You can't do things that you're not supposed to do and not expect to have to be brought to the front of the congregation for it. That walk of shame is not worth it. No matter what it is that you think that you're getting away with, even if you got away with it that time, it's not worth it. If you thought that you got away, you need to just go ahead and remove yourself from it and then ask God for forgiveness and keep it moving and pray to God that it never comes back to haunt you. But Broward County, the same sheriff that announced the PPP loan arrests, he's announcing something new. Let me go ahead and share that with you. Make sure y'all get the likes up, all right? Hold on, let me turn the volume up for y'all.
I think most of you at this point understand why we are here, and I'm just going to update the community in a general scheme of over the last 5 years, I've continued to echo this message across this entire county that this office will be transparent and we're going to be accountable, meaning when we know, this community is going to know. And the repercussions behind us knowing is someone is going to be held accountable to the degree as to whether they're disciplined from a suspension all the way up through termination. Just a few weeks ago, I was standing amongst you all talking about an internal investigation that we launched related to this PPP scandal. Standing here with the U.S. Attorney General, 17 members were indicted. We put the handcuffs on them and turned them over to our federal partners. And once again, we're in a position where we had to arrest one of our own. Not something that we're proud of, but most certainly something that I'm satisfied in the sense that our Public Corruptions Unit, our Office of Inspector General, and in this particular case, our Internet Crimes Against Children are doing precisely what we need them to do in terms of holding criminals accountable.
It's one thing to do a money scheme. It's another thing to do something and to be accused of something that you didn't do with regard to women. We could try to figure that out. I think the one thing universally, it used to be women and children, but the one thing universally that none of us disagree with, I'm hoping, is that we don't play when it comes to crimes against children. We just don't do it. We can disagree when it comes to the gender war. You can disagree when it comes to politics. You can disagree when it comes to God. You can disagree when it comes to money. You can disagree when it comes to what side of the fence that you on the UAW strike. But the one thing that I don't see anybody having a war against as far as where the debate is supposed to go is whether or not you should be committing crimes and its association with children. Let's continue.
Let's skip past the fact that we're talking about a deputy. A criminal is a criminal. I don't care if you're wearing a star on your chest or if you're a civilian. We're going to treat you all the same, which means we're going to hold you accountable to the laws of this state. Unfortunately, earlier today, we had to arrest one of our deputies who's been here, employed for about 6 years now, 35-year-old Deputy Thomas. He was involved in an incident where he was responding to a domestic violence call, and ideally, an officer goes out to a site location with the intent to protect and serve the community, or perhaps provide resources and mitigate this particular threat that may be taking place in the household. In this particular case, you got a deputy out here who did nothing more than take advantage of his powers, abuse his authorities, and solicit sexual solicitation of a minor. Now, you all have the arrest warrant, or will have access to it and have a chance to read through it, but what I can surmise from what I've been able to read and talking to our investigators, this here is one of the most grotesque and deliberate attempts to really abuse a minor in our community. Many of you heard me say this before, and I'll continue to echo and say it again. Our most viable asset in this community are our kids. And if we can't protect them, we don't have a future not only in Broward County, but perhaps impacting the whole future of this country. And so to read this affidavit, this arrest warrant, and talk to our investigators and see a lot of deliberate efforts to be nothing more than a sexual predator is an insult to this agency, it's an insult to this profession, and it's an insult to everybody who ever served in this capacity. So despite the hardships of having to arrest one of our own, I'm glad that we were able to do it and prevent a child from being abused sexually or victimized in any other form or capacity. Sticking with our standard practices and protocols, because he is a sworn law enforcement officer, afforded certain rights, he will be set aside on suspension, administrative leave without pay, pending the investigation, both internally and the criminal allegations that he's going to have to face. I'm going to pause and allow you to ask me some questions on this, because there's a lot of ways I can go, and I think this is better driven if you give me precise questions that you may have.
Sure.
The very ones. And first, let me go ahead and give some credit to this sheriff, and I forgot what his name is here. Let me pull it up. This is the guy that is now doing the mug shot of shame. 35 years old, not even halfway done with his life, and now this dude is literally going to be, if convicted, on a sex offender's registration, and then he's going to have to live with this for the rest of his life. Broward County Deputy Jeremiah Thomas engaged in explicit text conversations with an undercover detective that he thought was a teen. "35 years old, faces charges of solicitation of a minor, transmission of harmful material harmful to minors, traveling to meet a minor, and attempted lewd, lascivious, and lascivious written solicitation of certain minors." Says that he was arrested after he engaged in sexual conversations with a teenage girl and sought to lure her to a hotel room. The sheriff that is reporting this, the one that is at the forefront of this investigation, is Gregory Toney of Broward County. One of the most disturbing yet entertaining shows that used to come on the air, and for some reason, and I'm always wondering, especially considering how wildly popular it was Chris Hansen's, when Chris Hansen would show up on To Catch a Predator. When Chris Hansen would show up on To Catch a Predator, I was always wildly entertained, because the entertaining part was to see the different types of people from all walks of life and the type of excuses that they made, and how shameful, and how they automatically knew the minute that Chris Hansen walked in the room, and they would even ignore their instincts to show up, which I'm very, very glad that they did, because a lot of people would say, "Oh man, I can't believe it." No. When I see a criminal doing criminal things, I want the criminal to do it and get caught as a result of it. I don't want him to be able to get away with it. I'm not rooting for the bad guy, right? And so a lot of them would tell him, "Oh man, I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have came out here." But their desires for demon activity allowed for them to continue to push through, and they seen it through. They seen it through. And unfortunately, let me bring some people to the front of the congregation. It's not just this man right here. It's not just him. Unfortunately, this is normal within our communities. How many of us grew up and went to high school? Fellas, you know what I'm talking about. Ladies, y'all probably was some of the ones that participated in it. How many of us was in high school and we would always see the dude with the car or the OGs pull up, older, got a job, got cars, D-boys and all of that, and they would be talking to the high school girls. How many of us grew up seeing this? How many of us grew up seeing this? Remember when the pandemic was in flight? A lot of people was so focused on the PPP loans and the stimulus checks that they was getting and the opportunity to be able to work from home. But what they didn't focus on and what was reported, what was largely ignored, was the idea that school officials and administrators and people that were a part of our community that were intimately connected and understood exactly what was happening inside of these households were worried because the children had no opportunity for an outlet or to get outside of the house, and they were locked up basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the very ones that were offending them. And we know who they are inside of our communities. So when I see stuff like this, it saddens me, but it also gives me a level of satisfaction in that one less person that is doing the things that is so egregious to our communities is off the streets. How many of y'all fast girls that's now adults that's trying to act like you didn't know what was going on had a boyfriend, an older man, an older boyfriend when you was in school? It happens all too often. It happens all too often. Let's continue.
So did the incident that you just referenced while he was on a call, so that occurred while he was on duty?
Correct.
So are there other incidences, or is I'm confused about the internet part of it, if this happened?
Sure, so I can elaborate on that. From an investigative standpoint, once we got information and a tip that this deputy was involved in potential soliciting a minor and things of that nature, one of the things we wanted to do is to confirm those allegations and have our own internal investigation that would give us an opportunity to get facts. Facts is the most important part of this thing.
Reading the super chat shortly.
In order to do that, our investigators elected to work with our Internet Crimes Against Children because they have an expertise in this arena, providing all type of information to the community, safeguard measures, and we're accustomed through ICAC with dealing with sexual predators. This is what they do. This is their expertise. Our public corruption unit are the experts in terms of internal examination, investigations, but why not tap into the best resource we have, which is our own? And so our ICAC group were part of the investigation, and in this case, pretending to be a minor and having these communications back and forth. So that's their involvement.
So they did this after they heard he was doing something in person with a different minor?
With the same minor. So we'll backtrack. We go out to domestic violence call. Deputy arrives there back in September, have communications with the young girl there, 17 years of age. At some point, exchange phone numbers, have their text messages going back and forth. And throughout that texting and communicating, there had been strategic efforts to plan and meet with the minor, sexual communications, pictures being sent while on duty, exposing his penis and things of that nature. And so that really was part of ICAC's involvement, to be able to have that expertise, allow this dialogue to continue so we can have legitimate criminal charges that go beyond just administrative concerns. I'm going to go back to what I said. It's not just about administrative compliance here. We're talking about criminal behavior of the worst kind. As a law enforcement officer, there's two things I can't stand the most. One, anyone who's willing to run inside of a church, a school, and conduct a mass shooting and kill innocent, unarmed people. It's the most cowardice behavior I can imagine. The second, sexual predators. Those going out there trying to victimize our kids because they're capitalizing on the immaturity, the lack of understanding. And if you're going to do that to a child, what else did we miss, or what else are you willing to do?
And here's the crazy part about it. So now that we get more context, basically what happened was he responded to a call, and this is my understanding of it. He responded to a call and somehow, some way ran into a young chick. 16, 17-year-old chick, right? He decided that he wanted to shoot his shot. Ain't that crazy? The very ones that's tasked with protecting you is the ones that then turn out to be the ones that's the most predatory of them all. Responded to a call, somehow, some way he ran into a 17-year-old. Then he decided to shoot his shot, was exchanging information, texting back and forth, sending text messages while on duty, sending this thing. And so once they got the tip, their job was to continue the conversation in order to be able to get the evidence necessary in order to convict him. Oh, that's crazy, man. Crazy, man. Insane.
So when we got this thing going in terms of internal affairs, we went all in.
So, Sheriff, did we have this communication of exchanging the photos and messages with ICAT, or was that also with the victim, was with both?
It's a combination of it. I think one of the things we've seen, and very good job from our public corruptions unit and ICAC, was at some point we wanted to make sure that we took the minor out of this and not expose them unnecessarily to potentially getting hurt, harmed, or injured, or any other psychological damages that may come with that type of communication when you're a minor. So it's better suited to have our investigators take the lead, handle the communications, etc., just like you would see To Catch a Predator on other different shows. Very similar background in terms of they maintained the communication, they collected the evidence, and then they submitted that in one packet with our public corruptions unit.
And then he was trying to meet this chick in a hotel room. 35-year-old man, literally talking to a woman that is, or a girl that is less than half of his age. I don't know if y'all know how to do the mental math, but 17 plus 17 is 34. Go ahead and double check that for me. I think this C student's math is okay. The math is mathing right now. He 35, talking to a chick that's 17. At some point, they got tipped off. Now, here's the most important part about it, right? Is that it then, at some point, in some way, and I don't know how they got tipped off. He didn't highlight how he got tipped off. I don't even think it matters. But this is the very thing that I've been communicating to y'all for a long time now. It takes a community that is concerned about the citizens within in order for you to fix it. If you want to get the criminals off of the street, the police can't just mythically, magically identify it without first getting some correspondence from the people that's within the community. You know who the predators are. You know who the drug dealers are. You know who the ones that are the most offensive in your community. A lot of times they are part of your family. A lot of times they are part of the fabric of what you got going on. You know who these people, we know. Black people, white people, Asian, Indian, Hispanic, Latino, whatever you want to identify it as. We know what's happening within our communities, our households, and our neighborhoods. We know who the killers are. We know who the dealers are. We know who the dudes that continue to be the pedophiles. We know them all across the board. And so if you don't communicate or participate in the success of your community, don't sit here and think that somebody else is supposed to overprotect you as a result of it. The reason why these more affluent communities have better schools, have better environments, have safer streets is because they're willing to do what you're unwilling to do, and that is tell, in order to make sure that everything comes back together and they kids can actually walk down the street or play in the streets without having to worry about this police officer coming over and soliciting their kid in order to go to the hotel room. It goes back to the very thing that I keep communicating to you guys every single day. The culture is trash. And the minute that you divest yourself from this mentality in which you don't say nothing or whatever, so on and so forth, then you can start to have a safer street for your daughter or your son or your kid or whatever it is for you, so that you can go out to your car without getting your head knocked over, because they know better than to do that within your community. Let me see a little bit more of what it is that he got to say, and then we're going to move on.
Indication through your investigation that this may not have been the first time and maybe there have been other kids involved?
We haven't seen any indicators that there may have been other kids involved, but I can tell you this will be his last time. There's no coming back from this. One thing I'm getting very annoyed with is this notion that we have to keep playing this game of due process. Those things that take place. But if you read this arrest affidavit and you look at the evidence that I looked at, there's only one outcome that's going to happen here when this case is closed.
Sheriff, you said you guys got a tip. Who did you get the tip from? His parents? Was it
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was
his dad?
one of the father, correct. It was the father.
So the father found out. The father found out and tipped it off. Let me read one of these chats. We're going to go ahead and get away from this story, but I want to read somebody in the chat's question. Because I get this a lot. Whenever this conversation comes up, I get this a lot. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. I think I'm going to try to find it. All right, Rodney Denton says, hard question. I don't think it's a hard question at all. Yes, he is wrong. He's prefacing that by saying, yes, he is wrong. Yes, I think he is a predator. Would they say it was okay if she was 18 or 19? Because I think that would also be wrong. No, they would not. Because technically they are legal. And this is the conversation that a lot of people have all the time. And people, man, I have got into straight up knockdown, drag down, people unsubscribing from the Fight Club or whatever because of a stance that I took. And I'm going to take this stance and I'm going to always stand on it. What if it was your daughter? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. I know you think that legal is legal and all of that stuff. I don't. As a 41-year-old man today, and this is just me personally, and this is another reason why we need fathers in the household. For whatever it is, the reason that you decide that you don't want your baby daddy participating or you wanted to have children out of wedlock or whatever, so on and so forth, right? We need fathers in the household, straight up. We got to have fathers in the household because if it was your child, you would not be cool. I'm thinking, most of you, I'm assuming, because I wouldn't, so I'm always putting myself in that position, as I have a daughter that's 15 years old, and I'm fiercely protective over her. You would not be even remotely okay. Remotely okay with the idea of a 40-year-old man trying to talk to your 17, 18-year-old daughter. I don't care who decide that they want to take a stance against me or I ain't rocking with Anton because he don't understand the law and all of this other type of stuff. Oh, man, over here in California or Maine or New Mexico, the legal age is this. Man, I don't care what your legal age is. Man, if you come over here and I find out that you trying to talk to my daughter, it's over, bro. I will crash out. I will crash all the way out. That is the one thing. The one thing. See, legal age here in Florida is 16. No, the legal age in my household is like 22, 23. When her brain is fully developed and she can make strong decisions for herself is when she is then able to be able to step out on her own and not a minute before then. Flat out. I don't care what y'all say the legal age is. I don't care what they used to do back in the day. I am not interested in hearing anything that they used to do back in the Army or in the 1800s and the 1700s. I don't care what the law said. I got an extended clip, hollow points. Everybody going night-night. Everybody going night-night. And that's just a fact, though. So y'all can say and feel however y'all want to feel. But I'm a little bit different. So I don't really care about what the law is in your city. I know what the law is in my household. So it is what it is.